Hi everyone. When you start listening, you are going to actually be dropped off in the middle of a sentence. I'm very sorry about that. I just forgot to start recording in time. And yeah, it was my mistake. But just so you know, we're having a conversation for the UCSA elections broadcast. In this conversation, you will find Rhea and Cloë, who are running for CAO, Folke, who's running for treasurer, and Punn, who's running for secretary. So hopefully it won't be too confusing. Here, I'll just let you listen to the rest of the conversation.
That when they're facing problems, you're there to help them out, to step in to help organize an event or to help them plan something better, and also to tell them when they're doing something really well or just, when something went really well, when they're having a success. So also being there to motivate them and to help them move forward. And I think that's a big part of my campaign or why I want to be a CAO. But I think another part of being a CAO is also being a part of the board, working together with the board on events like Intro Week, the Golden Keys, and just making the rest of the UCSA more connected to the UCSA board, and knowing what facilities the UCSA board has to offer to the rest of campus, which is something that I think should be changed in the next board year.
Thank you. Cloë?
Good. I also think that I totally agree, obviously, with most of what Rhea said, because it's part of the job. I also think that we should connect the committees more, between them, because I feel like joint events is something that's really happening right now, and people are very happy about it. I think it's a really good thing because it brings a lot of people and interest together, and I think as CAO, we could really help the committees to connect with each other more and organize more events together by bringing the chairs together as well, which I think could be changed, because right now I know that the same kind of committees like Musico and DJco, they have the same CAO, and I really want to keep that way so that the chairs can also really get to know each other better and there's more connection between the boards.
Thank you. So Punn, you're running for secretary.
I am, yes.
Tell us about your platform.
So I would like to briefly go through my election statement. So in 3 main points. First part is about honesty and transparency, which I know a lot of candidates are already talking about because, of course, we all agree that it is a big issue on campus in terms of not getting enough student feedback. And also, I proposed a chat with the UCSA board, which is a very chill event where we can kind of talk to the students and make it a very low-key event as opposed to office hours. And my second point is continuity. Which I would like to continue the efforts of the UCSA board. I've included a lot of ideas within that in my election statement, but I would, for the radio show, I want to focus specifically on the website. And as secretary, I think it is a very important role to facilitate organization. So I really want to work on revamping the website, making sure the information is centralized, everything is very easy for students to access, and they know exactly where to go for information about the GP, for example, or for reimbursement forms, so all sorts of information. And my final point is extending the bubble. So I would like to facilitate this by kind of collaborating with Town and Gown, and again, making information centralized so students know exactly what to do if they wish to burst the bubble.
Thank you. And Folke?
Yeah,
sure.
So I'm running for the position of treasurer. And I would also like to go over my 3 main points that I mentioned in my election statement, which is, first of all, just clear contact and reimbursements, which basically entails to be very responsive over email. Also, things that people have had issues with this year is reimbursements. I would really like to bring the time that where you get a reimbursement back down by a lot. Then second of all, I think it would be very valuable if the UCSA treasurer and committee treasurers would be in closer contact, especially regarding some very treasurer-specific tasks, such as, for example, how to manage a budget, some rules that apply with regards to, for example, reimbursements. And then third of all, I would like to assess the inventory list, which is basically a list that with all the materials that the UCSA and the committees possess together, because not only committees but also students can actually borrow items from the UCSA, and a lot of people are not aware of that. And I think it'd be really cool and really valuable if there would be more focus on that.
Thank you. Okay, so the role of the UCSA is defined very broadly in the statutes as to represent the interests of UCSA members, which is all UCU students. What do you think are the interests of UCU students, and how does the UCSA get to represent that? How do you interpret that purpose of representing the interests of students, and how would you do that in your position as a board member of the UCSA? This is an open question. Just feel free to answer whomever wants to.
Yeah, I think the main thing that the UCSA should be involved with is to provide, for example, financial means to give committees the opportunity to organize events, activities, I would say extracurricular things for students to improve campus life, but also just to improve social experience. I think that's, for me, something very important that the UCSA does.
Yeah, I also think it's not only about facilitating the committees with the budget, but also making students aware that everything is, you can go to any event that you want to, and if you think that something is lacking, like one of your interests is not being represented, come to us, talk to us, and organize it yourself, either by making a new committee or through the new initiative fund, because we want to represent everyone, and that is very difficult because there is so many students on campus with so many different interests. But yeah, if like students help us with that by having all these cool events that they can go to and letting us know what is a good event or what is not a good event, I think that is something that UCSA can, that is something how we want to represent this whole campus.
Yeah. I think all of this is definitely super true. I think the UCSA is really all of us on campus. We form the association. I think the board tries to connect everything to make sure everything's running smoothly. And in that sense, I think the board can maybe do a slightly better job of making clear to students how they can help students. Because I think what makes UCU unique is that everything is student-led, everything is student-organized. There's not 5 people organizing everything. It's really a whole campus coming together to do things. The UCSA board specifically can offer things to people when they want to do stuff through the New Initiatives Fund, or things like weekend events that can be collaborations with individuals or committees. But I think for all of this to happen, it needs to be more clear that people can go up to the UCSA and that the UCSA has the board, can offer them these things. And I think so far they rely mainly on word of mouth for this. And I think it would be nicer in a new year to have this more out there, not just relying on word of mouth, although word of mouth works well. And I think that's seen how a lot of our scholar courses 100, 200, when that system doesn't exist. But I think it would be nice to have it out on the website, or just make it more clear through Facebook and through other means that you can go up to the UCSA board and rent a classroom, or that you can organize an event through the New Initiatives Fund. So yeah.
So I agree with all of you again, because those are all very relevant points, and I'd like to build on what Rhea said and also what Cloë said. So what you said about the information and stuff, I agree that information also needs to be very much centralized. That's why the website really needs to be updated so people know exactly what the UCSA board does, because obviously it's very unclear to people and can also be interpreted very differently. And in terms of inclusivity and so many events on campus, I think it's also important to take into account that maybe there isn't a place on campus for everybody, which is why we should also facilitate extending the bubble and collaborating more with Town and Down, so we can have more concrete steps, and also a very I lost the word. Just like a clear step of how people can get off campus and be more involved in that way as well. So taking into account the needs of everybody.
why do you think that it's important for everyone to be represented? So what my question, I guess, is what do you exactly mean by people being represented? How does that service that the UCSA provides make people have a better experience here? Like, I don't know if I'm asking the question right, but
I think when I introduce UCU when I'm giving a campus tour or when I'm meeting like a school counselor, when I talk about UCU, you start with the academics and people are already interested. But when you start talking about everything else on campus, so committees, the social life, the initiative that students take, you can really see how people, like their faces light up. And that just makes you feel more, wow, I'm really a part of something. And in that sense, I think everyone should have the choice and to feel like they're part of this. If they don't want to be a part of it, if they don't want to be in a committee, that should be completely fine as well. No one should feel pressure to have to be in this. But if there are people on campus who want to do something, they should feel like they can do it. They shouldn't feel like, I want to do this, but I don't know how and I don't know who to talk to and I'm too overwhelmed. Like, if they want to do something, the UCSA board should be the people they feel can facilitate them to doing that. And in that way, I think the board can represent campus.
I think also it's, I agree, and I think it's very important to note as well that we all live on the same campus here. We're all UC students. We all study liberal arts and science. I think there's just like a lot of homogeneity like between us as students, and I think also obviously we all pay UCSA contributions, and I think especially since we live on such a small campus, it's just really important to be there for each other. And I think also to bring this back to the UCSA, I mean, the UCSA board, we're all UCU students, so therefore I feel like it is just very important to always make sure that you are open and accessible to anyone that lives here on campus.
Yeah, I just like to say that this is your home, not only because you live here, but I feel like you should also feel at home in the way that you feel like you can do whatever you want to do when it comes to interests or hobbies or being represented, because this is where you will live for a year, 3 years, or a semester of your exchange. But like, I feel like if you're living somewhere and you want to call it your home, you should have the chance to be represented, and UCSA board has a really big role in that.
Okay, and so the committees are part of the UCSA, right? They're part of the UCSA structure, and right here we're in Radio Co. UC Radio. Not Radio Co. It's not called like that. And you have tons of other committees. And I guess what they're supposed to do is to allow people a place to I guess engage with their interests. And what I find weird that I hear both in this conversation and the previous conversation is that there seem to be two conflicting narratives. One, that we want to give everyone a place to be represented, to have their interests represented. You can do whatever you want. And also that it's just overwhelming to have so many committees, and that it's a management nightmare and these things. So I guess my question is, what should the role and function of the committees be, so that it serves that purpose of making people feel at home? And do you really need necessarily more committees that serve more narrow, more specific interests, in order to have everyone feel a place where they feel invited and have a sense of community? So what purpose should committees serve, and how could you get a sense of whether the UCSA is actually achieving its goal of representing the interests of students?
I think it really depends on each committee, because some committees attract like a lot of people. So for example, say like DanceCo, there's so many people involved in that, and it's purely just like something that people love to do, they enjoy. Or some more very specific, I guess like GameCo, for example, very specific interests. So I think it also depends. I think that it's the current range that we have is a very good amount, and the purpose for me, at least when I decided to join a committee, was to, I guess, engage more with people in other year groups and also people with different with the same interests as myself. And in that sense, I think, I don't know if I answered the question very well.
I'm not sure I asked the question very well.
Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, I think to add to that, I think a part of being in a committee is also the board of a committee. I think, at least for me, I really enjoy working with a team. And I think it's a completely different feeling when you're doing something alone and when you're doing it with the team and you're all focused on a particular goal, or especially when you share similar interests, you can just have really easy conversations and you're also just working together, which is a different sentiment. And in that sense, I think that's another gap that a committee fills. So it allows students to work together in teams on common goals and come together on that. And it also serves that the events and projects that committees take on is open to everyone on campus. And it's a way for students to kind of broaden their interests outside of the classroom. So I love politics, but I don't study it because I'm a science major and I now don't have that much room in my curriculum. So it's super great when I hear of like excursions that Politics Co is doing, when they have like chill sessions. It's nice that I can hear about these things. When they organize guest lectures, I can still do these things without having to sit in a classroom. And I think that's something just so nice and unique.
Yeah, I think the last point that you mentioned is something I very much agree with as well. I think one really nice thing about committees is that the events they organize are inclusive to everyone. And I think also something that's important to note is that all the committees that we have, they were, well, in the past they have been a student initiative. They started off as a small committee, and apparently there was enough, there were enough people that supported this new initiative. And I think that's also something that committees should keep in mind, that even though some committees are very specific, have a very specific, are active in a very specific field, it's still really nice that their events and the things they organize are just open to everyone here on campus.
Yeah. And when it comes to like what you mentioned in your question about feeling overwhelmed by everything, I think it's just important that people know they don't have to go everywhere. Like it's there for you to enjoy. If it isn't your interest, then that's also okay. But if it is your interest, then join, because you can meet people, and that's really, the first couple of times may be very scary, but after that it's so fun to find people to have the same interests. And I think that is the main role of the committees, to connect people with each other on campus and really develop your own social life.
Great. We're going to move on to some questions that have been sent in by listeners. Mm-hmm. This one, I guess, is less about proposals and more about, the kind of people that you are. And it just asks, if you noticed that one of your fellow board members isn't doing your tasks or isn't putting the work into it that they should do, how would you deal with this?
I think keeping the board together is, for a large part, I think also the task of a chair. But I think definitely, since you're a board of 6 and you work together so much, it's just like a shared responsibility that you have. Because I think if you're in a UCSA, then it's just you have to do your task, because if you don't do it, it won't be done. It's not like in a committee that there's always, for example, a CAO that can help you out. So in that sense, I think the responsibility is there. So I think it's just also, I think it's also just like a group effort to make sure that everyone, does their things, and that people encourage each other in that.
Yeah, I also think, of course, the communication is extremely important. So maybe the fact that board member is not getting stuff done, there must be a reason for it. Mm-hmm. So I think the most important thing is to talk to them about it first, and because there may be so many other reasons that really affected why they weren't able to complete it. So I think really having good board relationships and then addressing from there. If they are just lacking, then I mean, it's not exactly our position to do that, but just communicating.
I think definitely like working together as a team. So if someone isn't doing their part, and like Punn said, you can communicate and find out why. If it's just a really busy week, then I think you come together as a team to maybe someone else takes on a little bit more, and they have the awareness that, you know, next week it might be that someone else is a bit more busy, so you take up a little bit more. And I think that comes with really building a team dynamic. And then I think answering the original question, something that I like to do when I'm working in a team is that often I think people kind of stop doing their tasks when they either lose track of like their goal or are just slightly less motivated. It's not easy to just be super motivated 24/7, 365, and that's completely normal. And I think what's really nice is to, in some way, help them look back and see what they've achieved, so that they can see that it might be small things that they've done, but that has made a difference. And that kind of helps, I think, build your motivation. And if you set really short-term goals, just taking off to-dos on a list, that gives you like this sense of accomplishment, which then I think, again, builds your motivation and then will help you make sure you're keeping like a check on your tasks. So.
Great. We move on with another question. We already had this before, but I guess it applies here as well. And it's every candidate talks about continuity, but not everyone is happy with the way the UCSA is currently run. What would be one thing that the UCSA board currently does that you would not continue if you were on the board next year? And parenthesis, don't answer with, I would do more of this, I would do this as well. Literally, what wouldn't you do that is now done?
Well, I kind of mentioned this before, but I wouldn't depend just on word of mouth for information to go around. Because I think as much as word of mouth is important and works, I think it may not be accessible to everyone. And I think for that, definitely not neglecting the website, like Punn was saying, making sure the website is updated as a central hub for information, making it more clear what really are office hours for, or is the concept of office hours really working? Definitely, making that more clear.
I think something that I would, at least try to change to next year, so not do anymore next year, would be the way that reservation works right now. So, for example, if you want a room or just like an item, I think maybe an online form or through any kind of website or anything electronic would be much more efficient than email contact, because emails can get lost quite easily and you don't have as much overview. So I definitely think that would be something that we could stop doing and do differently next year. Or,
Okay.
Not exactly the right answer to the question. But
No, it's fine. I mean, you're the ones who answer the questions.
You interpret it.
No, I think that was the right interpretation. So there's this whole theme of bursting the bubble and the bubble of UCU and how it makes people feel, interact, and decide what they do and what they don't do. And I want to get a bit your thoughts on the topic. So do you consider this to be a problem? And if it is, what is the problem with it exactly? And what do you think is the UCSA role in addressing it?
I think this is quite a big part of my statement, that I want to connect town to campus, which essentially is bursting the bubble, or at least extending the bubble to town. I think it is a problem because there's so many students on campus saying, oh, I want to go into town, but I don't know how or when or where. And I think UCSA is about developing social life, and if town is part of that, then UCSA should help you to reach town. And I think that can be fixed by either working with Town and Gown, they are also very enthusiastic about that, or by having collaborations with certain bars or clubs in town. Think about like what Ask did last year with Time Space, where there's like a collaboration with a certain like area or a lounge where you can go as UCU student, show that you're a UCU student, and they then get like a discount. just like the small steps and motivating people to get off campus as well. I think it is important for UCSA to think about that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do have to note that, speaking also from my own experience, I think UCU students can be quite lazy sometimes. So just going to the bar for a beer, for example, instead of like going to town or exploring the city, is something
lazy and cheap.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think it's the UCSA's task, or that UCSA board could focus more on encouraging people to explore town and to burst the bubble, so to say. But then I think that quality over quantity should be something that counts. For example, I think what we see with the fashion show coming up and with the musical, those are things off campus that people are really excited for, but also it's something that has been put a lot of time in, and I think that's something that we should really encourage.
I guess another question would be, do you think the changes have to be, like, in order to make this happen more? Like, I feel like everyone kind of wants to go to town more, but no one really does. But at least in my case, I cannot blame it on myself, right? Like, I'm like, okay, I could just look for stuff to do in town. I meet people, go to a library, talk to someone, right? And I guess my question is, to what extent is it even the UCSA, can the UCSA even make structural changes that will somehow result in people going out more? And to what extent is it really just about a culture and the way we talk about, or maybe just a more personal thing? Although maybe not personal because everyone has the same problem. But
I think that already says like how UCSA, I think it's very subtle if you just prime people to get into town more. It's not going to be a structural change, like, okay, from now on everybody's going to go into town, campus is going to be empty. Like, no. But I think just promoting it more will already help those people that maybe don't feel like campus is representing them well. Like we talked before, like maybe those few students, if they do benefit from going into town, then I think it is worth the trouble of trying to make town more represented on campus.
Yeah, and I think like it also helps knowing a group of people that already, or like having friends that already burst their bubble, because you get like to hear firsthand experience of what it's like for them. So I know a couple of people that go to the Kringloop and then they volunteer there and it's amazing. And I'm like, oh, I would also love to go there. So next time, let me know when you go, and then we'll go together. And also in terms of what we can actually change, I think what Cloë already mentioned is just making everything very clear and easy for students to know how and what they can do to leave campus and what opportunities are out there and how amazing it can be. Because I am involved in Amnesty in town. It was such a hassle at first, like their first like info bureau. It was like in the library, and I was like, oh, it was like snowing. I was like, oh my god, I don't want to go. But then it like you meet so many new people, and then also like with word of mouth, you just spread. And I know a lot of people on campus now are also involved in Amnesty, so I think it's a good experience.
I think also like other small things, like just to add to this, could be having a page on the website that's just like burst the bubble. Just with, I don't think you need to like necessarily tell people you should do this or you should do that, but just putting the option out there, making information easier, because I do think a big part is just people are lazy, and it still should be their choice. So you just put the information out there and people can still choose if they want to do it or not. And I think what the past board did with weekend events, I think was a really nice way of having options of having planned events in town. So if one of the reasons you don't want to go is that you don't want to go alone, that gave you the option of having planned events in town with a group of people, which I think the new board could continue and involve campus more with, like having a survey to decide what kind of activities you do. And I think that's...
Yeah, there's an interesting point there with people who go into okay, so there's this whole idea of representing everyone and making sure that everyone's represented, but maybe there are certain things that cannot be represented by having a committee that specifically caters to a quote unquote interest, right? Like maybe there are just different ways of doing things that we don't know because the way things happen at UCU are very specific, and I think it connects nicely to I think the idea of representing everyone's interest connects nicely to the idea of bursting the bubble, because you get to see different ways of doing things, and that you might find better, that you might like more, and that's part of an interest, that there is simply no way, like you could have 700 committees and you still won't get what you get from going out. And they're just like a public service announcement: hop on the bike and find something to do out there. Look on the internet for blogs and things to do in Utrecht. There's plenty. I think another part of it is not running for the UCSA here, just saying, just like telling people like, fuck, try this. Like just telling people, right? Like often that's enough, and like you said, like as soon as a few people start doing it, then their friends start doing it. It might be as a combination of many things happening at once. So we're going to ask another question, which is, what are your thoughts about the state of mental health support on campus? And yeah, that's the question. What's your any points on that?
I think last year, the last UCSA board, so the one before this one, made a very big improvement with regards to that, since we now have the peer support system, which is a student-led well-being system in collaboration with the well-being team that was already there. And I definitely think that is something that the next UCSA board should keep on encouraging, because I think with the amount of stress that we all have sometimes because of the high workload and because of maybe just wanting to do so many things, it's just very important to also have the opportunity to talk to people about these issues that you might face.
Yeah, I think also I've been talking to a couple of my friends about it, because of course mental health is a very big issue, and especially on campus it's a very big discussion as well. And one of my friends actually brought up that a lot of people's issues has been channeled into posting on UCU Confessions, which I think is very problematic, because there is no consequence after that. You kind of just get to let out whatever you're feeling, and then people reply in the comments, and it's also a lot of times attacking them, or sometimes also providing very good input. So I think definitely encouraging the peer support system, but also in collaboration with Ask, working towards another student life officer, because I know it is so incredibly difficult to get hold of Mark Baldwin. It's actually impossible. Like, his schedule is just booked whenever, and mental health is a very important priority that should be put first on campus. So having another student life officer to balance his workload and also giving opportunities for students to actually speak to someone, I think is a very important step that we need to take.
I also think that I definitely agree, like, Mark Baldwin is amazing man, but so busy. I think additionally we could also provide information on looking for help outside of campus, like GPs, like where can you find them, which ones are good, but also psychologists even, and then obviously also peer support. I think that's an amazing thing that is a thing here, and it's growing so much. Like, the awareness of it is growing, and I think we should really keep doing that, like making people aware that there is support here and where you can find it, but also for what kind of like difficulties you can go to them.
Yeah, I think we can also kind of work a bit more on increasing support for new students. So we have intro week, which is really nice, but it's 1 week, and then you're just here, and I think you can really start feeling quite overwhelmed once you just immediately finish intro week and you start your classes. And something that the current board has been brainstorming is having something called intro time, which is where you have some more activities in collaboration with Ask, with College Hall, after intro week. So during that month, which can help you a bit more with academics or just anything. And I think to add to that, it would be nice to have a little bit more support for international students, like having, like something I said in my statement was just having a small event like bike riding and road etiquette, because where I come from, I would never ride a bike on the street.
You can't.
You can't.
It's
like,
impossible.
my parents would be like, are you crazy? No way. Like,
you would get killed.
And I was so fascinated when I came here by it, but maybe I was a little bit intimidated as well. And yes, my intro week family, they helped me so much. But it would be nice to just have that as like an event, and it would be a fun thing as well, So just small things that I think maybe I think about now looking back, and And I'm like, that might have been nice. And also, when I talk to new students who are thinking of applying to UCU, they ask me these questions, and I'm like, yeah, that's actually a really good question. Maybe people come here and still have that question, and we should work on that.
Nice. Well, we're actually running short on time now.
Okay.
So we'll ask one last question, and before that, we'll ask one last question, and after that, we just go off to sign you off.
Yeah.
So the last question coming from our listeners is going to be chosen by Sanchika, who's sitting here next to me, and it is okay. So this is a question. I find the UCSA can sometimes be difficult to approach, which can be problematic and affect the relationship between the board and students. How can you make sure that you guys become more quote-unquote approachable and open to the UCU community?
Well, I think something I talked about with a friend, and that's something that's actually a very practical idea would be, for example, very practical idea, the UCSA already has a coffee machine, but no one knows about that. But I think, for example, just promoting that we have, for example, free coffee in the UCSA office during lunch, for example, during office hours, would already get people to come to the UCSA office more easily, and also that would make it easier for the board to get in contact with other students. I think it's something very simple, but also very practical and efficient.
Yeah. I think the current board, I don't think they do anything to make themselves be unapproachable. I think if you know them as people, they're super approachable and happy, and I think most people who know them don't feel like they're unapproachable. But I think there is maybe this general idea on campus that, the UCSA board is not that approachable, and I think a big part of that is just, I don't think people really know, I didn't really know what I could go to the UCSA board for. Mm-hmm. What can I talk to them about? I mean, great, I can have a chat, but I can do that with many other people. So why should I go to an office hour? Like, what do I gain from that? And I think if I don't know that, then I don't know if I'm going to go in there and then they're going to say, actually, I can't help you with that. And that might be what's stopping me. So I think if people are just more aware of exactly what the concept of office hours is for, and the survey that the UCSA board is doing now, evaluating their approachability and office hours, could just help change whatever the exact problem behind not feeling like they're approachable.
Yeah. Well, people are listening, so what is the purpose of UCSA office hours? So, why should people go to you?
I've been talking to the current board about that, and I wanted to know really, is there somewhere where you say this is officially what the purpose is? And from what I found out, there isn't anywhere that officially says what the purpose is. It was kind of more, based on word of mouth. People can tell you, oh, you want to get a classroom, you can go to them. Or you want to ask about this, you can go to them.
I think coming in as a first semester student, I kind of just thought of Entry Week as to get keys to a room or to borrow equipment, and then that was it. So very formal and just getting very practical things. Whereas office hours is actually open for discussions, and like Rhea said, we really need to instill that into the students at Entry Week right off the bat. Come to us at office hours, have a chat. I also think that it's because the Ask office, when you walk in, it's immediately their couch, which is super nice. You're like, oh hey, you're there. But with the UCSA board, it's just a narrow corridor with shit around. So I don't know, it's not as inviting to come in. Which of course, it's a structural change, but I guess that's a reason why people see it as unapproachable.
And I think the survey helps with that, because then why do people find it unapproachable? Because we can sit and think, and that's great, but it would be great to know what people think.
And I think we also all agree on having more opportunity outside of office hours also to show that we are approachable. The event that we organized, the barbecue with the CAOs, a lot of people came to it to just talk. And because the people initially come for the food. We know that. We're not stupid. But once you're there, you can start talking to people. So I think little chills with the UCSA as Punn is suggesting. I think that's super smart, because people will initially come to just chill and food and drinks and I don't know what. But once they're there, it's way easier to start talking to them about whatever you want to know. That you can also ask in a survey, but also in that case, word of mouth.
Okay. Well, that was our last question. Now we're just going to finish the broadcast. thank you all for coming. I'm going to say the same thing I said to the other group. Thank you all for running. UCSA is a big responsibility. Once you get, well, some of you get elected, it's gonna be a lot of work. And honestly, like I thought of running and I didn't because it's just too much work. Like it's a lot of time, and I'm very thankful there are students among us who are really willing to take on this responsibility. Maybe an extra semester, maybe like a course load reduction. I think I speak in the name of everyone that it means a lot, and thank you all for running and for being willing to make that sacrifice, which some of you will. And well, just let's finish off with a few statements by everyone. Maybe let's go left to right.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting us here. I think I'm still very motivated to go for UCSA Treasurer. And I think this hour, it was just really nice to discuss some of these topics that the UCSA will probably come across next year. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I think that was really nice, and it got me more excited to share ideas with everyone, and wish you all very good luck.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was so much fun, and I think the past week, like just talking to more people and like being here and these kind of things have just, they made me just happier that I'm running and just more excited to just be here.
Yeah. Like everybody said. No, it's actually really, really nice to talk to people, because then you actually get some like real life feedback, and you kind of know that like, oh, okay, my ideas are actually answering these issues, and vote Punn, vote done.
Well, thank you all for coming. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. This show has been hosted by me, Alberto Delgado. It's been produced by Sanchika Aurora. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. And the last hour was produced by Stanley Ward. This has been the UCSA Elections broadcast for 2019. Thank you all for tuning in, and see you later. You get to hear us later. How do I say that? I don't know. Bye. Thanks for listening.